Hello and welcome to Sci-Fi Book Trek. Today we're doing spoilers on Star Trek Destiny, second book, Mere Mortals. Well, the last two chapters were horrendous.
I like it.
Why they had to fight
The
Herosians? It's like, why? What? Like, don't get me wrong, it was nice. It just felt, especially coming at the end, it felt like, what is the point? It just felt shoehorned in there from like an idea he had and like just dumped it.
Perhaps it could have been pulled earlier in the story.
Yeah, I think if it had been pulled off in the middle, you would have had at least some action in the middle. And because it's not connected with anything.
To be fair, they do. The reason that they've got the Aventine and they've got the Enterprise at that point, and there's at least a reason, because they didn't have the backup fleet waiting in the wings.
But you could have easily transposed that and stuck it in the middle. You have less Herosian ships just attacking the Enterprise or the Aventine on their own, or a different race. It's like you could have easily took that out of where it was and stuck it at any other point in the novel. It felt like.
Right.
We should take
action set piece
and push it somewhere else.
And because it came with, like, all the action was compact into the last two chapters.
I can't dispute that.
It felt like, why is that here? Why is that needed? Because if you take it out, it's still stuck there for however long you need for the Borg to invade.
But there's also, as I said to you before, there's that element of trying to ramp things up so that when you're going into the third book, I think...
Well, yes, but 2 chapters away from the end, ramping things up is not a ramp. That's a brick wall.
Yeah.
Now, the Borg, when, like, the Enterprise and the Aventine with their plot armor are somewhere else, the Borg invade, destroy this armada. The Aventine and Enterprise come back, find that
Voyager
Chakotay is still alive, who's head captain of Voyager, because, plot armor.
I mean, you say plot armor, he's basically...
Oh, yeah, like, he's
He's got his... Like, the book describes it as he's got his face smashed in, and he's basically coughing up blood.
Yeah. But, of all the ships, and especially, like, Voyager was on the front line, the first one to be hit. Like, it's like, of all the ships, it's Voyager. Yeah, okay, sure. Because everyone else is just dead. And then their ships are, at this point, completely battered. Because they've just been through the Corona, they've just survived a Herosian attack. And so, for some reason, they then work out how many Borg cubes have come through. And that's over 7,000. I have a problem with that number. Just because, one, it feels too big.
It's really not.
I mean, like, the problem, for me, to doing the job they're doing, it feels too big. it feels like, why don't you send 2.5 gazillion at that point? It's like anything over 200 feels like, why didn't you send a Googleplex?
True. The thing is,
it just feels.
But like I said with the last book, there's always been that sort of running plot hole where the Borg send one ship, like one cube to Earth. It's not even one of the
100 ships, 100 Borg cubes would have done the job, and it would have been. Oh no, they've lost one or two, but there's still 93 ships, and there's no defences left. So it feels like that could have been an actual threat. Having 7,000 just feels like I don't care.
Space is very big, though.
I know, but it feels like, a Doc Martin stamping on an ant at that point. It's like, I don't care. The threat is so massive that it's lost all meaning.
Yes. But don't forget that as far as the Borg are concerned, the Federation has the transphasic torpedoes.
On one ship.
On one ship, yes. And that is a stupid situation to have. I mean, so much so that they don't even transfer the plans to other ships for fear that the Borg might intercept that information. Yeah. Okay, it kind of makes sense from a tactical point of view in one respect, but you've also got one ship that's having to fight all the fires. It makes no tactical sense that, for instance, between the Aventine and the Enterprise, just transferring that information between those two ships, not broadcasting necessarily over the airwaves, but having a load of runners go out and just say, right, we can't transfer this over subspace because it might be intercepted, but this is how to build transphasic torpedoes. Yes. Equip all of your ships that are in. You take it to Mars, just equip all the ships in Utopia Planitia.
Yeah. But also, that's another point, is why, of all the ships in the Federation, do you equip it to
the Enterprise?
The Enterprise.
Yeah, because
it's not the best in the fleet.
No. And
is it just because, it's Picard?
But here's the other thing. Voyager was the ship that was originally equipped with the damn things in the first place, and they don't seem to have them at that point.
Yeah. It does make sense why the Enterprise. And also, especially seen as... I'm sorry, the captain is impaired.
That's always been a factor.
But not... Like, in this book, when there's, stuff happening, Picard is mostly zoned out.
Yeah. It's all, again, it's another thing with Picard, that it's always been that factor that he's got that connection.
Yes, I agree, but it feels like it's more in this book, and it does mention that it's mainly because he sort of self-assimilated himself to do an espionage mission onto a book. In a previous book. And it didn't go well.
You don't want to get onto that book.
But
you genuinely don't want to get onto that book, because you will just go, what the hell? I have that book. You can probably tell.
We might do a review of it at some point. But it just feels like after he's come back from that, he's so impaired as a captain. It's like, at what point, I know he's a respected captain and everything, but it feels like someone should have gone, look, I'm sorry, but there's a desk job in, we'll stick you wherever you want as a, ambassador
shut the fuck up.
But you did make a point last book of saying that the Federation are pretty stretched for captains.
Yes.
Hence the reason for
But-
Esri getting a field promotion.
Yes.
And don't
I
forget
agree.
that they don't have
Fair
Riker
enough.
to take over for the Enterprise.
But I guess that's why he's captain. Why he's the one who's been given transphasic torpedoes, I don't know.
Yeah.
If he's zoning out. Because he's the one who's got to say fire. Because Worf will just stand there and occasionally cough, and that's it.
Yes.
It's just when you're fighting a battle.
But that does feel completely in
yes.
character.
Don't get me wrong, it feels completely in character.
But you like this book.
No, that's the thing.
You're just getting angry at the bit.
I do like this book. However, the Picard sections only take up like 3 chapters or something. It's very minimal. The Hernandez parts I do like. The Celor are they are not smart.
No. Like I said, high on intelligence, but crapped out on wisdom.
Yes, it's like I can understand certain points, like they shield their planet, they shield their stuff, so they don't want to be detected because they're 600 years in the past.
Mm-hmm.
It's like fair enough. When that day comes and they're like caught up with the timeline they've left, their plan is, we'll contact great civilizations that are ahead of us again. It's like, you already know the civilization you contacted are you.
Yes. It's a paradox loop that they've created.
Yes.
And the entire reason that the disaster happens in the first place was because it was a different city.
Yeah. Some cities escaped the blast. One of them went back to the sort of dawn of time and has been sitting out there.
Chilling.
Just relaxing. But they realise that they're the civilization that the Cellar contacted. So they have to destroy their planet and their home so that they can exist.
Yes. So that the cycle can continue.
Yes. And so,
but
they put it, the timeline's intact.
But this is where the references in the first book to Children of Time come in. Because I think that's why they set that up. Because you're essentially creating a paradox. Whereby, in order for something to happen that has already involved something, and that's why Mack obviously references that particular episode in the book, but the parallels between the situations that group has basically got to create the disaster in order to make it so that they exist. It's with paradox logic.
Yeah, but I mean, like, it mostly holds together. It's mostly fine. That I don't have a problem with. it's the fact, because when they go off in their own little cities, they're all sort of screaming at the loss of the consciousness, of the gestalt, of like the many people, because they're all split up.
Mm-hmm.
So after waiting for like you to catch up to the correct timeline, why don't you contact the people who are you that like are still you, because they live forever, so they should still be the same people who left with the city.
They effectively live forever as long as they've got power.
Well, yes, but it's like, why don't you want to be together? And this goes back to the first book with the cellar, which was in the Columbia. Like, he did all that just to get back to the
Azure Nebula.
Yeah, the Azure Nebula, but to get back to the Gestalt consciousness, to be regrouped. But this group don't want to contact that group because there's no reason.
I'd say possibly Paradox.
Well, no, but that's the thing. If they've waited up to the point of the timeline is correct, where their city's destroyed, why don't you then contact? Because they're making.
I suppose that makes.
They're making their grand work is to contact a civilization. So why don't you contact a civilization that is you? And then say, well, how do we come together? I mean, it's not like they could build some sort of like warp corridor they could instantly transport themselves through. Oh, no, wait, they can. All right. Okay, so they've got no reason why they can't get back together with this other city, and then start looking to see what other cities have gone missing. It's just like, why don't you group back together? Don't explain why not.
Those things bother you, don't they?
It just annoys me. It's just like, and like they're still trying to contact advanced civilizations. It's like, this civilization is you, and they've been working from the dawn of time. Are they still as stupid as you? Because it feels like they've gone down a cul-de-sac in their evolution, and they've just stagnated, and they don't know what they're doing. That's the problem with, and like, don't get me wrong, exploring that as a concept is fine, but they don't explore it. Like, Hernandez never brings up and goes, you're just stagnating here. You're like trapped in immortality, just making paintings, probably of the same thing over and over again. And, but anyway, back to Hernandez. Like, going on her story is fine. I do like it. And what happens with her crew. It's interesting how they all deal with their imprisonment. Or don't deal with their imprisonment.
Yeah.
I did like the Frankenstein reference. That was interesting. I started off, I enjoyed the Esri part as well as the Hernandez stuff, the Columbia stuff. The Esri parts are just... It's because, you know, it just blends in with the Picard section. And I don't know. I'm not a big fan of that part. The first book seems like its own encapsulated story. And like, it films, you could read it and you go, right, I've got enough. There's beginning, middle, and end. the middle book doesn't really. It has a middle. Does it have a beginning? Does it have an end?
It's
just a middle.
It's a total setup book.
The problem is, I don't even think it's a total setup book because most of the setup happens in the last 2 pages. I mean,
it's setting up the character of Hernandez.
Predictions. So from last one, my predictions about Troy hasn't actually come to fruition yet.
What was the prediction about Troy? That she's going to...
that she's going to be
regenerated.
Injured, and then the sellers are going to fix her.
Bearing in mind that the doctor did bite her.
Yeah. Yes. That... I'm glad you mentioned that because that brings me up at another issue.
Yeah, I know, that was...
Predictions on hold. 1.
He's sunbathing while she's...
Well, yeah. 1, he's sunbathing while she's in pain, and this is at the time the medical tricorders and stuff are still working.
Mm.
And she's sort of like biting the lip, trying not to show pain. But like she's got monitoring equipment like in her bloodstream or in her nervous system or somewhere in her, and that would register pain whether she's biting her lip or not. And so that would send a signal to the doctor's tricorder to say she's in pain.
Mm.
Stuff isn't working. But he's busy sunbathing on a rock. It's like, do your job. This is not a holiday. You're not in Brooklands. Do your job.
He is a giant lizard.
Yeah, but it just feels like, you know, his phone would have vibrated essentially, and he was going, "Oh, what's this? Oh, I need to deal with that soon. I'll wait until, you know, she's finished her conversation because I don't want to embarrass her because it's like only a little thing at the moment. But then I'll go and investigate."
But to be fair, to his mind, it's already a foregone conclusion.
Oh yes, but he doesn't want her to die.
Yeah.
So like, her being in pain, he would come over and not essentially say, "I told you so," but he'd go, "Right, now we need to do something."
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to, it comes down to the last chapter. But
that entire situation is a bit
the
strange.
thing is, yeah, when it all kicked off and there's like commotion happening, the two sort of like, I don't know, ensigns were like the two sort of people we don't know.
Yeah.
Essentially come in and go, oh, and they sort of act as rationally as you think. You go, "Oh, right, something's going on here. We'll just separate and go, look, doctor, go out of the room, we'll calm her down, don't worry." And you can understand their reactions.
Mm.
What I can't understand is Mother in Tuvok. It sets up, "Oh, I sense Troy's in pain. I will stay up all night. I don't need any sleep.
Mm.
I will sit up nearby, like room nearby, and like monitor the situation." Why isn't he one of the first people to come in the room when he hears stuff kicking off?
Mm.
Like, and then he can go, "Oh no, the doctor's right.
Yes.
You two go back to your bunks," or like restrain or something. No, Tuvok, nowhere to be seen. And like the second in command,
Christine Vale.
yeah, she's nowhere to be seen.
Mm.
Who knows the situation? She could come in and just easily sort out the situation. No, she's nowhere. Everyone who could easily sort the situation in a second
is conveniently out.
Even though Tuvok is supposed to be staying up all night to monitor the situation close.
Okay.
And that's one. Anyway, back to predictions. Calm down. Back to predictions. So, I think most of the stuff I predicted last prediction still hasn't come true because
it's still playing on.
Wheels. Well, yeah. But one thing I did was the Aventine and the Enterprise get together, and the Aventine saves the Enterprise at the last minute from a Borg cube, which is essentially what happens.
Yes.
The Borg are using the Cello network. Yes. And that brings me to another point. How come there's no time dilation anymore?
Time dilation from
the network. Because when the Cellos went through it, there was time dilation.
Yes. And it dropped them in the past.
But the Enterprise and the Aventine have been going through them. No time dilation.
No.
So that means they must have stabilised somehow.
I don't know whether it explains it. I assume that when they pass through those corridors and there is the time dilation, that it's a one-off effect.
Maybe because it's still stabilising.
Yeah.
You like, I'll accept that, but yeah, it just. I would have liked.
Yeah, it's not explicitly said.
Yeah, I said the next 2 books will be Borg heavy. No. This second book has not been Borg heavy. If you take out the last chapter, or maybe the last 2 chapters, it's almost no mention whatsoever of the Borg. There was more mention of the Borg in the first book. There's almost none in that. But anyway, predictions for the 3rd and final book. Right. Cellar are forced to disband the Borg. And I did put forced. So, well, not disband, displace the Borg. Because I think they'll send them back to wherever, because they're still sentient creatures. So why would the Cellar decide to kill them? So just displace them back to where they came from. And with the network closed, the space corridors, they can't get back to Earth. So that seems a perfect solution. They will save Troy and a child. That's still going to. Who knows? That might happen. I'll give the away team back because by that time everyone will know who they are, so they can't hide. And then what they'll do is give the away team back and then go, we're going to disappear, and then go to. Oh, what I'm thinking is.
I must go. My planet needs me.
And they'll go back to, the Dawn of Time group. Why they haven't contacted them already, I don't know, but I think they'll finally contact them and go back there. And Hernandez will decide to join them rather than go back to Earth. That's what I'm thinking. That's my predictions.
Okay. So, join us next time for the 3rd and final book in the series, which will be Lost Souls. I'm looking forward to see what you think of that one and how it concludes. And then to see whether you fancy doing any more Star Trek in the future, or tune in next time.
Yes.
Hope you're enjoying it. So this would normally be where we'd put some of the outtakes for the recording, But in this particular instance, we fell down a hole recording this video. You can probably tell by the editing that not everything we record makes it into the final cut. In the hours of actual video that we record, we try to reduce that down to information that actually makes sense with regards to the book review. In this instance, we spent an inordinate amount of time discussing the Universal Translator, and while it has nothing to do with the book, I felt it was interesting enough to warrant leaving in as somewhat of an extra. This is some of that material. If anyone's interested in seeing the whole discussion, then tell us so in the comments.
Well, anyway, I'm going to take you on a mad ramble.
Go on. Not that this video hasn't turned into a mad ramble.
Page 75. Picard swears.
Okay.
He says, merde, which is French for shit. My French is terrible.
How is it that the Universal Translator didn't pick up on that?
This. I thought that question and then went on a mad ramble. One, do you think the Universal Translator does not translate swear words? That's why the Federation is known for not swearing. Because swear words can be very complex to translate into something, into another language.
I mean,
especially where you use the swear words, how you use the swear words, what emphasis you put on that swear word the sentence.
Certainly, there's a million different contexts for. Are we going to be able to? Am I going to have to censor every single instance of the word fuck?
But no. But that's it. Yeah, exactly. There's so many instances of but especially in English. I mean, the Americans look at how we use that word and just go, "What are you doing with it?" We use it as, verb, adjective, like anything.
Mm.
We could make a whole sentence just using that and still make it sound right. But that's the thing. And so the person who was originally encoding it, the Universal Translator went, we're not doing swear words because they're too complicated. And that's just stuck. Because also, because it's, the Federation sort of got American roots. It's very Puritan.
Mm.
So they don't like swearing. So it's just been a thing that the Universal Translator does not translate swear words.
I mean, perhaps,
it will translate this is an insult. But it does actually translate the swear word itself.
I would say maybe.
This leads me to my second, mindfuck.
Generation?
No.
Okay.
Picard, he says, merde. Has Picard been speaking French all this time, and the Universal Translator just translates him to English?
Yeah. And
this shows that he's actually speaking French.
Yeah.
And that all the other characters speak their own unique dialect. Well, that's the thing. You'd think if it goes the Federation, when we met aliens, we would have not a universal language, but at least a language of the planet.
They answer that in Voyager.
Do they?
Yes. There's an episode called The 37s. They find Amelia Earhart.
I think I might have seen. They find it starts off. They find a station wagon. No,
yes.
Like a pickup truck.
It's a pickup truck floating in space. When they find Amelia Earhart, there's a whole load of other people locked up in pods, and they open up the pods, and they let them all out. And the one guy is clearly Japanese. There's another guy that's American. There's Amelia herself. And the Japanese fella, when they're all talking together, it's like, you're all speaking Japanese. And then I think it's the black guy, possibly from New Orleans, or at least that's the impression that I get. He goes, to me, you guys are all speaking English. And then Janeway says, yeah, it's the Universal Translator. It translates anything into languages which people will understand. But then you'd think that if the UT's having to translate, it would have to know what to translate into. It just doesn't work by brain
waves.
Yeah. Unless it does. I mean, because the Japanese soldier is a Japanese soldier from World War II, and it's like, I'm hearing Japanese. It's like, how are you hearing Japanese? You don't have one of these.
Maybe it's when they first speak, it detects, all right, you're speaking this, so we'll translate everything into this. So if you don't speak, everything sounds gibberish.
Perhaps. But then, how is that then translating that into something he can hear? If I was speaking to you, right, in French, for instance, you would hear French coming out of my mouth, right? But the universal translator would then take that and it would translate it into English, and then presumably it would either feed it out through a speaker so that you could hear it in English, or it would feed it into an implant somewhere here so that you could then hear the English. Exactly.
Yeah.
But this Japanese guy doesn't have any sort of Babelfish thing. He doesn't have a universal translator. So, Janeway speaking English, how is he hearing that? It's not coming out of a comm badge as Japanese, surely, because in order for it to come out of a comm badge, I'm pointing at my tit, in order for it to come out of a comm badge, it would have to come out in all of the languages potentially for that room. So you would hear Japanese coming out of the speaker, you would hear English coming out of the speaker.
You wouldn't have it coming out of the speaker. You'd have it so it's connected to sort of like your internal bone structure. So it reverberates the sound.
Yeah, the ear bones.
Yeah, the ear bones.
But presumably
it would
part
not
of that
have a speaker.
But presumably part of that then, you would have to have this implant or some sort of system that is connected to the ear bones, unless it's projecting some sort of
like a ultrasonic.
Yeah, that then
vibrate.
Then
well, then it would have to translate, send out ultrasonic signals to everyone.
Yeah, and it would have to recognise what their mother language is in order to be able to then go, right, this person needs this signal. And how do you then broadcast that?
Unless...
A few moments later.
It's weird that would the universal translator be able to determine accents? Would they be able to determine, like you say, localization?
8 hours later.
The children that grow up in France have to speak French.
Yeah. I can imagine that being a thing.
But yeah, also, I mean, Hoshi's main job is to translate new languages.
And she's brought on to translate Klingon.
Yeah.
What follows is a brief construction montage.
Basics. It's a two-parter. It's one of the earliest two-parters. It's Basics 1 and 2, where the Kazon take over the ship.
So much later that the old narrator got tired of waiting and they had to hire a new one.
At this point, it's just become two guys talking random shit.